Hello and welcome to the podcast From There to Here, a podcast I brought to life with Kintsugi heroes. I'm your host, Emma Bellamy, and each week I'll have a conversation with those who know what it takes to rebuild their lives away from home. Today, my guest is Yohana Jury. Yohana is an Indonesian immigrant who relocated to Australia on a scholarship to pursue advanced education in her desired field of study. In this episode, she opens up about the difficulties she encountered in finding a job that aligned with her skills, among many other things. She describes what it's like to start over at a lower professional level. In fact, Yohana initially found herself working at McDonald's to gain her first Australian work experience, even though she had local credentials and an extensive professional experience from overseas. Today, she has achieved her professional goals and thrive in her Australian life, but her journey required tremendous effort and perseverance. So yeah, if you're looking for practical insights on how immigrants navigate the workforce and tackle the challenges of adapting to a new country, this episode might be just what you need today. Johana Jury, welcome. I'm delighted to have you on the podcast, and I cannot wait to have you share your story and insights as an Australia-based immigrant.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Well, you're very welcome. I really cannot wait to hear your story in more details. I know a little bit about your background, but it's great to have the opportunity to finally get into the depth of it. So, I know that you are originally from Indonesia. Can you share a bit more about what life was like for you over there?
I'm from a small town in Indonesia, which is called Yogyakarta. So if you're talking about how big the town is, in terms of number of people, it's quite big because we've got probably around 3 million people. But in terms of size in Indonesia, that's actually the 6th or the 7th biggest city. So it's not really big for Indonesian size. It's a very old city. So it used to be the capital of Indonesia. It's very cultural. We actually still have kingdom over there, even though we've got president in Indonesia. The city itself is called a student city. So there are so many university over there. It's pretty laid back. Lots of people coming to Jogja to study, and the price in Jogja is very cheap compared to other city in Indonesia. I guess growing up, I'm always exposed to other culture, not only Indonesian culture, but lots of students, university students come for exchange and stuff like that. So that's how I grew up. In terms of what I did in Indonesia, obviously I've done my study there at university. Then when I was doing my bachelor degree, I've got the opportunity to teach as well. So I start working quite early, I think when I'm on my second year of university, doing lecturer assistant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then when I finish, I pretty much work at my university in the morning, and I do a side job, which is also teaching night class at other university. And that's pretty much my life. It's very laid back, not too busy, but also I don't really have lots of free time as well. But it feels like it's a bit slower compared to Australian life.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I guess maybe over here you've got it's quite interesting. Over here you've got 5 days a week, and you've got weekends is Saturday and Sunday. Over there our life starts at 7 a.m. but we finish at around 4 p.m. But there's so many things that you can do. So say, for example, you don't really need to cook because buying food is cheaper. You might be able to get helper to clean up the house because it's also cheap. to get a helper. Like you can go doing a laundry and it's only around 30 cents for a kilo.
Wow.
So if you're in Australia, you're working from 9 to 5, so you pretty much have to do everything yourself. If you want to go out, going to a restaurant, yes, you can, but that's quite pricey. While in Indonesia, you go out in a restaurant, $5, you can have so many food.
And excellent food as well.
Correct. So that's probably why I don't feel like life is so much in a rush over there. And maybe because I'm still young as well. So I don't have as many challenges as you grow older. Life is nicer when you're young.
Yeah. Perhaps it's to do with the life period you were in when you were in Indonesia versus the life period you are in right now. So tell us, what made you move from Indonesia to Australia?
So I was involved in a couple of international development projects. So one of my manager actually say, "Oh, do you want to continue your study? And if you want, apply for this and I'll give you a recommendation letter." So I did apply and went through everything and I got accepted. So I pretty much got scholarship from one of the Australian university. And that's why I moved to Australia. So I got scholarship to do master's degree. Throughout the study, I met my husband. So I've got scholarship with a husband as a bonus.
So you met your husband in Australia?
Correct. Yeah.
While you were doing your master's?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's amazing. Is he Australian as well, or?
He's Tasmanian. So this is probably a joke, but a lot of Tasmanians say, well, we're Tasmanian, not mainland people.
Yeah, we have the same thing in my town in France. I come from the Basque region, and people there don't think they are really truly French. So it's funny. Okay, so you arrive as a student in Australia. Do you remember what were your first impressions as a student? Because I imagine it was so different to studying in Indonesia.
So when I first arrived, I actually arrived on the winter intake. And I don't recommend this for anyone that comes from tropical country. So I still remember that it was so cold. And I live in a shared house temporarily because I haven't got like permanent accommodation. And I remember my first morning, I was going to have a shower and it took the longest 2 minutes to wait for the water to get heated up. I actually had to sleep with my pajamas and then 2 layers of sweater and then one thick jacket. It was the most uncomfortable. It was just so cold. And I remember I arrived on Friday and then on Saturday, the family took me to go out for shopping and then we went to McDonald's. I ordered food. They were saying like, "Oh, do you want me to help to order?" And I said, "No, I've got my English sorted. Live I went to an exchange to America and I survived, so I should be all right." But then I realized because the first question was like to have here or to take away. And it took me 5 takes to understand what they actually say. And I keep saying, "Pardon? Pardon?" And then the daughter of the family that I live with saying, "Oh, auntie, it's to have here or to take away." Oh, okay. And at that time, I thought, how am I going to survive my study for 2 years if I couldn't even understand to have here or to take away?
Wow.
So that was my first impression. After that, I was literally just listening to the radio just to make sure that I can survive because otherwise I wouldn't be able to survive.
Wow. Was it the accent that you could not understand, or was it that you thought your English was better than it actually was?
I think it's the accent that is quite difficult the first time because I survived America for a year. So my English isn't that bad, I think. But yeah, the accent is very difficult when you haven't got any exposure to Australia.
It's funny because I have had a very similar experience to you. I still remember ordering a glass of water and I said it, water. like a French person. It's a very French accent. And the guy looked at me so confused. And I think it took me 5 minutes to get understood. And that was my first experience ordering a drink. And I really thought, oh my gosh, life is going to be hard if I can't even order a glass of water. And then he said, oh, water, with a very Australian accent. And I was like, oh, okay, that is water. It was just so hard. So I really totally empathize with your situation.
So yeah.
So how did you go? How did you do with the studies? Were they as hard as you think it was going to be?
I think it's actually not. McDonald's experience is a bit different to uni experience. I found all of the lectures, all of my friends at uni, they were very helpful. And I actually can understand what they say. And when we're doing, group works and things like that, I understand what they say. And I don't know whether that's because I keep doing my listening to the radio to improve my listening, or I just get used to the Australian accent, or maybe both. Or maybe they just speak less thick Australian English.
Yeah, maybe the academic field has a milder accent.
Probably.
Or maybe you were exposed to it, so you actually understood it better.
That's what I'm thinking of.
So you graduate, and then I'm assuming that you basically had the decision to either go back to Indonesia or stay here, and you decided to stay here. Was it hard to take that decision?
I actually have to go back because it's a scholarship.
Okay.
So we have to go back. I have to go back for 2 years. Pretty much that's what the contract said. Otherwise, if I don't go back, then I had to pay the Australian government the amount of money that they've spent on my scholarship. So I went back and I did some of the project. I finished my contract, and then it comes to the decision, all right, what are we going to do with my now husband? Are we going to stay in Indonesia or are we going to stay in Australia? We were talking about getting married, and then the document that is needed to get married in Indonesia is just huge. So we were taking the practical step because in Australia, you only need to have passport to get married. Look, my husband loves Indonesia, and if he could, he would probably live in Indonesia. The tropical country is just so much more entertaining for him than living in Australia. But back then, if you want to get married, it's just so much easier in Australia.
Okay, so you decide to go back to Australia. You get married. Like it's a big change in your life, I'm assuming. So do you remember how you felt at the time to change your life like that and, start completely all over again?
I think it's more of that when you're studying, you know that you're going to be back after that study period. But then you get married, you pretty much, well, this is your life now. You're going to try to make it happen. Or if you're not, then you might fail. So that's pretty much the realization when you finally set your life in here that this is your life. You have to make it work.
And how was it for you? What did you think was the hardest or the most difficult?
I think the most difficult is getting a job back then. It took me probably a good 5 months to get a professional job. And I actually couldn't get a job. And then I was like, I'm going to start from zero. I don't think people look into my resume because I haven't got Australian experience.
Were you still working in parallel, online, remotely in Indonesia, or had you stopped working?
I stopped working
Okay.
at that time. So pretty much there's no income. You know the feeling when you work, let's say 6 days a week in my case, and then all of a sudden you don't work at all. So that feel of, gee, you're very useless because you don't have anything to do.
Other than applying for jobs and,
And then applying for a job. I started to do this spreadsheet of what job I have applied, who I need to call. I need to follow up the call, when is the job finishing and things like that to decide, okay, maybe they've moved on. So I probably applied for a good, I don't know, I think maybe 5 to 10 job a day.
Wow. Oh,
And and at the third month, I said to myself, because every time I called, they say, oh, you don't have Australian background. That's why we didn't look into your resume. So I'm like, okay, so I need Australian background. So I'm going to do anything. So I actually applied for McDonald's jobs. How funny it is that,
It's like we came back to it.
you know, like McDonald's was my first worry. And then all of a sudden that's the only job that I can get.
That must have been hard for you to apply there, knowing that you were qualified, that you had a master's degree in Australia. It's not like you had qualifications from overseas, you had local credentials. How did you feel?
At first, I think yes, but you have to do what you have to do.
Mm.
So that's why I applied for McDonald's. Getting into McDonald's, that probably helped me. If I go applying for a job and not getting a job any longer, it might actually impact my mental health.
Mm.
So as soon as I've got into McDonald's job, I guess it's just the feeling of, all right, now actually you can have a job in Australia. They can actually see you now, not just this, person.
From overseas. Yeah.
Yes.
But do you think that this was truly about not having an experience in Australia, or do you think that there were other elements that prevented you from getting a job?
I'd like to believe that there might be other elements. I applied for one job and I didn't get interview at all. 3 months after that, so this is a job that I applied just before the McDonald's one. So 3 months after that, that job is advertised again. And I actually applied for the same position and I got interviewed. I'd like to think that it might be that I haven't got enough skill or things like that. But I got interviewed, and that's actually my first professional job in Australia. So I accepted the offer. And this is exactly the same job that I applied 3 months prior. But I didn't get any interview.
And so that was a few months after the 5 months, or
That was I think 2 months after I got the McDonald's job. Yeah.
so altogether it took almost 7 months to get the job you wanted.
Yeah. It feels like you're actually crushed
Mm.
because you started to question, can I actually do this? Or am I actually skillful enough? Or am I good enough? Like, especially when you've got your professional life and then you move into a country. Yes, the line of qualities are different, but how bad are you that people don't even look at your resume?
Yeah, you take a hit in your self-esteem.
Correct. Yes.
It can take a while before you feel legitimate to apply for jobs where you are perfectly qualified for. But if you've had this negative feedback again and again and again, it can really make you feel like you are not deserving.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
Mm-mm. You must feel like you are so far away from this now.
Yeah. But it also teach me a lot. So now if I'm helping someone that is newly arrived here, I say, look, it takes a lot of time and sometimes you feel that there's no end of it. At least I can share my experience. So then at least they know that, okay, so for someone like you to have this experience, then it is sometimes normal. Like some people are lucky and get the job straight away, but some not. And what I want to share is that, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So you just need to keep going sometimes.
Yes, believing that things will change with time. And it's hard to feel or think that way when you are in the difficult time because you feel like it's never going to change, you know?
Yeah. But at least they've got someone that has done it before. I'd like them to take it from that side that there is this example that is not always the great one where you all of a sudden get a job and sometimes you do need to take time a bit longer. At least they know that, yes, there's someone that has experienced that. So then they can keep going.
In your work, are you in contact with migrants who have a lot of experience overseas and struggle to adapt or have to reassess their expectations?
In my community, yes. Most of the time, I would just say to them that if you work hard in Australia, you will get the chance. They will look at you. Time is probably sometimes quite slow, but if you work hard, they will provide you with the opportunity. While back home, you need to compete with 350 million people. The job market is not that great. So in terms of competition in here, it's not as many compared to in Indonesia. So I think it's just the work hard. And often what I say is like, don't be ashamed if you need to go down one level, because if that's where you need to start, then you start in there and then you prove that you can do the work and they'll promote you when they know that you're capable.
Mm. Yeah, that's actually very good advice. Go down a level and be so good that they can't ignore you. you know?
Correct. Yeah.
I know that today you are in a leadership position, and I wonder whether along your journey you have been underestimated, or whether some people think of your position perhaps in a different way based on your immigrant background.
This is quite interesting because my first job was in a very multicultural sector. So I actually work with newly arrived and migrant. And often when I go to other office for a meeting, they just think that I'm the client. So they'll be looking at me and they say, "Oh, have you got an appointment with one of the social worker?" I say, "Oh, I'm actually here for a meeting." And they were like, "Oh, okay." So it's just that, and I understand because this is like, what, 17 years ago. Today is quite different because you see lots of bilingual workers and things like that you cannot assume. But back then, you'll be sitting in a meeting and you're probably the only brown girl on the table. It can be self-esteem, but often you're like, "Oh, do I need to put my idea forward or do I not? Are these people gonna listen to my idea or are they gonna judge?" Because back then I was quite young as well. I think right now I'm in the position that, well, I need to speak. If I don't speak, then they're not gonna listen to my idea or they're not gonna hear my idea. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. But back then, there are lots of that question toward myself. Am I worth enough to sit on this table? Looking at some of them has Australian order medals and things like that. And then here's me, Indonesian girl who just start the professional life in Australia. So yeah, I think it changed a lot nowadays. For example, like in Melbourne where I work at the moment, we're so diverse. There's so many bicultural worker that anyone can be any worker.
Well, I wonder though, when you were starting your job and there were not as much diversity, how did you build up your confidence?
You try to build your network. So the more people that knows you and knows your work, the more you're gonna get supporter. And sometimes you don't need to promote yourself because those people are gonna speak on behalf of you about your achievement and the work that you do. I often use that a lot, even right now, so that I don't need to boast about my achievement. In Indonesia, it's actually a bit taboo to talk about your achievement. We're supposed to not boast and share about our achievement because there might be someone that is not fortunate enough to be able to gain that achievement. So I still use that and it still works.
I love that. It's actually interesting to see that in your culture, humility is very important, because I thought that Australians were like that. Australians are quite humble. You can see people that have a lot of money or very well paid jobs, and they can still look very relaxed in the street with flip flops and a t shirt and a short. And in France, I don't think we have that as much. So that's something that I thought was actually very cool about Australia. And I thought that they were a bit, I don't know, a bit more low key. I don't know if you feel that as well.
Yeah, I still feel that because if you compare it to America, where you really need to market yourself, like you really need to be up there and things like that. Yes, Australia is very chill, but I think it's more of the Asian culture. You need to make sure that you are not seen enough in the society because it's very communal, while Australia is still quite individual compared to the Asian culture.
Do you feel like you've had to change a lot since you arrived here?
I don't think I need to change to survive, but yes, I change a bit, but I don't see it as in like I'm forced to change. It's more of I'm growing into a person that I need to be because I grow in here.
Yeah, so it's not forced to change, but it is quite common that when you change your country, you feel as if there were sometimes two persons, like there is a bit of a yourself as an Indonesian woman and yourself as an Australian woman. Do you feel that divide sometimes?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, I'm very independent when it comes to here, but like back home, I still need to listen to my parents. Still need to listen to my mom. So in Indonesia, regardless whether you're an adult or whether you're 40 years old or whether you're 50 years old, when mom and dad say something, you're gonna need to do it. Or you're considered as this ungrateful child, even though you're not a child anymore. Sometimes you still needs to be like that. And then let's say, for example, you've achieved something, you know something, you go back home for holiday, you just try to make sure that you don't upset people with your achievement. You just come back to your old you, because otherwise people will be looking at you and then say, oh no, you're becoming like that because you live in Australia and things like that. But it's natural, like you switch it naturally. It's not like you need time or things like that to switch. You just know that these are the two different worlds that you're gonna need to be able to navigate.
Mm, I love that. I wonder whether your husband, when he sees you in Indonesia, thinks that you are a complete different person or not.
Sometimes, sometimes he does. So sometimes, like say for example, when we're on holiday and then we're like, "Oh, mom is saying this and things like that," and then he will be like, "Oh, you become Indonesian in making decision." It's funny because sometimes he often tease our daughter and say, "Oh, your grandma is not gonna be happy with this because you become very Australian."
Do you still see Indonesia as your home?
My main home? Probably not. Yes, it's my home, but I also have a home here because my family is here. Like my husband and my daughter is in here. So home for me is like where they are. I used to be really missing going back home. I remember I go back home and I really want to come back.
Hmm.
Like it's so funny because the word going back home is pulang, and then going back where you stay is kembali. I actually say I want to go home to Australia rather than going back to where I stay. So I don't consider Australia as a place to stay anymore, but a place to live. I still call Indonesia is my home. And when I say to my family, rather than saying that, oh, we're going on holiday to Indonesia, I'll say I'll go home to Indonesia. But over there, I also say I'll go home to Australia.
Yeah, so you have two homes. But personally, I shift a bit back and forth. I think that sometimes in your life, you may feel an affinity with your country of origin because something may have happened. And sometimes you feel more Australian because, your life is there. So I think it's not a linear thing. I think it's a bit of a circular thing, dependent on so many other factors. I would love you to share some things that can inspire other people who are perhaps struggling to adapt in Australia. And I wonder whether there is something that you wish you had done earlier that made you feel more included and valued that you would recommend others to do.
I think find your community, because when I first moved here and when we decided to live here, it was only me and my husband. We're a young couple. And then probably after 5 years and things like that, that's when we started to have what we call a family friends, which is pretty much our community. Once you've got your community, it's so much easier. This might mean a community of the same cultural background, but it might also be what you call it a family friend, where you feel like you have family, because the hardest part is not having your family here. If you have your family here, you're very lucky. But if you don't have your family here, try to find that family friend and create that support that you might need, because that support is the one that keep you going. Yes, you've got family as in like your husband, your children and things like that, but sometimes you need someone that you can complain. Your husband might not want to listen to, like find that girlfriends or boyfriends that you can hang out without, you know, needing to kind of annoy your partners. And the community as well, like if you've got a very strong community, they might be the one that can give you guidance and answer some of your questions. I know that now there are quite a large number of community that got WhatsApp groups and things like that that you can join. and you can ask questions. And I can see that that is very valuable because you can say, hey, I need temporary accommodation. Can someone help me? Or I need my resume getting looked at. Can anyone help me? It's just those kind of things that makes your life so much easier. And they also can say, where's the best place to get chili sauce, or where's the best place to get, discounted rice if you don't have enough money and things like that.
So, how did you make your friends? How did you find your people?
Well, I've got my uni friends, and my uni friends are pretty much the one that link me to other friends that they've got. But a lot of the things as well with university students is like, yes, you've got your uni friend, and then all of a sudden, all of them got job in other states. Then you're left with no one. Like they've got jobs in Canberra, or they've got a job in Sydney and things like that. And then you're like, oh, I'm the only one that is left in Melbourne. But you can also volunteer. So lots of my friends actually come from volunteering in different organizations. So you work with them, you meet once a month over the period of 8 months. They pretty much almost know what you're doing because every time you catch up, you're talking about your life. So that's where you find friends. And from there, you pretty much build up your support group.
That's a very good advice, I think, to volunteer, because to share a cause or to share a passion or to share something you like doing and you're invested in is going to, yeah, attract people that are like-minded, and
Correct. Yeah.
it's a good way to connect. I wish I had known that earlier as well, because I think I would have done some volunteer work before. It took me a few years before I went on that road.
And a lot of the time, people that are volunteering are very generous. They just have this generosity. So they just want to help.
I definitely agree with you. And they can make you feel very welcome as well. Do you have any final advice or word of wisdom that you'd like to give to people who are struggling in Australia?
I think what I'd say is that, yes, if you move to Australia, it can be quite hard sometimes. It's different to your home country, it's different to your comfort place, but people here are nice. You can seek for help if you need it, and someone will come to you. And sometimes time is very tough, but just keep going
Mm.
because at the end of the day, everything is going to be all right.
Have faith. I think it's about have
Yeah.
faith in your future self
Yes.
and your future life. You know, yeah, that's a good one. Do you have any book or movie or any piece of content that you would recommend to others who would like to get a better understanding on what life must be like as an immigrant?
Not as an immigrant, there are not a lot of books. There are a lot that is American based, but Australian based are like a book by Ando. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with it, but it's called The Happiest Refugee.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
He makes his journey very easy to understand in a funny way, but yeah, it also shows the struggle and also the achievement. And I always use this as an example because he faces all the challenges and things like that. And he faced the Asian issue hit about, mom and dad wanting him to do all of the three things, either medical law or engineer, or otherwise you're not going to have a good future. But he actually then pursue what he wants to do. I always say that this book is good, whether it's for immigrant, but also for young people, that sometimes life trajectory you cannot plan, but it's what you make out of it that will be useful for you.
I have not read it, but it's on my list. So you made me want to read it, and I will do that very, very soon. Thank you for the recommendation. I love it. Do you have anyone in your community that perhaps has inspired you, who's an immigrant as well, that you would love to hear on the podcast?
From my community, I've got Anita Dewi, and I can pass you the details. She's a librarian at Monash Uni now. She's a librarian. I can't remember what other university that she's currently working with, but she actually created this band that is pretty much recruited university student from Indonesia, but also the community member from Indonesia. And they're playing Indonesian songs where people can dance and things like that. It just created so much joy. And she's the humble person. She's a professor at university. You wouldn't know that she's a professor at university. She's just that humble person. And if you meet her, you just want to smile and laugh because it's just her personality that brings light and joy.
Well, I would love to have her on the podcast. And it's good to know that some people are making such a difference. Bringing joy is so important.
Yes.
So I have 2 questions that I like to ask to my guests, and they are a bit weird. So I hope you are okay with this. But the first question I have is, when I say the word migrant, what does it evoke to you?
It's a choice.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it different to a refugee because we choose to move here. We choose to have this kind of life. And we're lucky enough that we have the choice to choose. For some people, especially the one that is a refugee background, they don't have the choice. They just need to flee and then see what life will take them. But migrant, it's a choice. And there are lots of things that we have to make choice in when we arrive in our new destination.
Yeah, it's so true. Having the choice is a privilege. And I know that life as an immigrant is tough, on many levels. But the fact that we have the choice is something we need to be grateful for.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And what does being Australian mean to you?
I think being Australian means being part of a great community where there are lots of opportunities. And that's what I always say. Like, there's so many opportunities that you can get in Australia that you might not be able to get in, whether it's your home country or other place. There's just so many opportunities. And Australia people are just so nice and laid back. Like, even if you make some mistakes and things like that, you will be all right.
It's a land of opportunities. I
Correct.
like that. So for those who would love to follow you, where can they find you and contact you?
They can contact me at LinkedIn. So I've got Yohana Jury as my LinkedIn.
Great. Okay. And you share some interesting things. You like to be quite inspirational on your LinkedIn.
Oh, thank you. I try.
Yohana, thank you so much for sharing your story and being so transparent and open about your experience. It was just so lovely to have you on the podcast. I was so happy to interview you.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it because there's not many people that wants to know about my journey. So the opportunity is really good because if someone feel that they can connect with my experience, then it might be one of the ways that I can help them.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Yohana and the story she has shared. If you did, please like, follow, and share the show. This would allow the podcast to be known, but also for our production to expand. Next week, I will be interviewing Laura Gutierrez, another immigrant who left her country of origin and has deep insights into the challenges and lessons of her journey. I was your host, Emma Bellamy, and I cannot wait to bring you on another journey from there to here.